Hi there, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's December 9th. Today, we celebrate the botanist who was also a spy during World War II. We'll learn about the German photographer who saw artistic inspiration in his close ups of plants. We'll hear some prose about winter, and we grow that garden library with a book that offers us 100 tips for growing a more glorious garden. I'll talk about a sweet little gift of bling for your indoor pots and containers. And then we'll wrap things up with the woman who became the beautiful face of a produce company. But first, let's catch up on a few recent events. Here's today's curated articles. We'll kick things off with a post by Lisa Steinkopf, the houseplant guru, who wrote, "Will I ever call Sansevieria by its new name?" Yes, it's true. The plant most of us know as the mother-in-law tongue has a new name. It's goodbye Sansevieria trifasciata and hello Dracaena trifasciata. So Dracaena is the new name for the mother-in-law tongue plant or the snake plant, whatever your preference is for the common name. But it is official now. It's a Dracaena trifasciata. Try not to get too worked up about it. As I like to say, we're living in exciting times as DNA testing helps us to better classify plants. It's the taxonomic work of our time. So, congratulations, taxonomists. And now the rest of us just need to get with the program. Then there was a fabulous Twitter update that was shared by the Royal Society, and it showed a beautiful illustration. It was actually a microscopic view of blue mold growing on leather. Well, that update got me a little curious, and so I did a little research on blue mold and discovered that, of course, Penicillin expansum is what most people refer to as blue mold. Blue molds are the bluish fungus that grows on food. Most people are familiar with the blue molds on some cheeses, especially this time of year over the holidays. Then finally, Rosalie Foray over at Herbs with Rosalie shared a great post about substituting herbs. And her post starts out with this question: what herbs can I use instead of fill in the blank? That's a common question that Rosalie gets. And although it may at first seem like a simple question, the reality is that herbal substitutions are more complicated than you might first think. And Rosalie reminds us that we need to know how to think about an herb first before we begin identifying appropriate substitutions. Rosalie walks us through a series of questions like, what do we want to use the plant for? How does the herb taste? Thinking of herbal formulas, and the particular herbal remedy that we're preparing. Anyway, Rosalie's post is excellent. And if you're interested in searching for it in the Facebook group, just type in herb and Rosalie's post will pop right up. Now, if you'd like to check out these curated articles for yourself, you're in luck because I share all of it in the listener community on Facebook. If you want to join that group, it's completely free. All you need to do the next time you're in Facebook is just search for Daily Gardener Community, and our group will show up on the search, and then you can click to request to join, and then I'll admit you into the group. I'd love to meet you there. Here are today's brevities. On this day in 1855, it was starting to snow on Walden Pond, and Henry David Thoreau wrote in his journal, "At 8:30, a fine snow begins to fall, increasing very gradually, perfectly straight down, till in 15 minutes the ground is white. the smooth places first, and thus the winter landscape is ushered in. And now it is falling thus all the land over, sifting down through the treetops in the woods, and on the meadow and pastures where the dry grass and weeds conceal it at first, and on the river and ponds in which it is dissolved. But in a few minutes, it turns to rain, and so the wintry landscape is postponed for the present. Today is the birthday of Peter Smithers, who was born on this day in 1913. Sir Peter Smithers was a British politician and diplomat, but also an award-winning gardener. He worked as a British spy during World War II and was said to have inspired the fictional character of James Bond. His obituary stated that flowers were important to him. He said, "I regard gardening and planting as the other half of life, a counterpoint to the rough and tumble of politics." Smithers learned to love the natural world from his nanny. When he was in his 50s, Smithers was finally able to focus on horticulture and botany full time. He loved rhododendrons, magnolias, tree peonies, lilies, and wisteria. He developed a garden that didn't require a ton of work, along the same lines as Ruth Stout. He wrote, "The garden is planted so as to reduce labor to an absolute minimum as the owner grows older." Great idea. Thanks to Smithers' travels, the Royal Horticulture Society asked Smithers to write his gardening memoirs. The book was part autobiography and part garden book. Smithers had observed gardens in England, Mexico, Central America, and Switzerland, and he shared stories from his incredible career, like the time he was serving in naval intelligence in Washington when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. And George Cohn commented, "Smithers is as comfortable talking about his career as he is in explaining the behavior of wasps in a flower garden." And Smithers followed certain basic principles to help ground him as he pursued the hobby of gardening. All gardeners could benefit from Smithers' wise advice. He wrote, "The garden shall be a source of pleasure to the owner and his friends, not a burden and anxiety." Today is the anniversary of the death of the German plant photographer Karl Blossfeldt, who died on this day in 1932. Working in Weimar, Germany as a sculptor and architect, Karl made his cameras himself and designed them to magnify up to 30 times, which allowed him to capture the incredible forms, patterns, and textures of plants. Blossfeldt's work was not a passing fancy. He took pictures of plants for 35 years. Karl said, "If I give someone a horsetail, he'll have no difficulty making a photographic enlargement of it. Anyone can do that. But to observe it, to notice and discover old forms, is something only a few are capable of." Karl preferred to portray an ideal, and as a result, he carefully selected his specimens. Even then, he shaped them with strategic pruning and clipping and arranged them in the very best light. As a teacher of industrial design, Blossfeldt wanted his students to understand that art and design originated in the forms of nature. And he wrote, "The plant must be valued as a totally artistic and architectural structure. And he also said, the plant never lapses into mere arid functionalism. It fashions and shapes according to logic and suitability, and with its primeval force, compels everything to attain the highest artistic form. 4 years before his death, at the age of 63, Karl Blossfeld created a book of his photographs called Art Forms in Nature. The book featured 120 photos, and they were all created using a homemade pinhole camera. The book made him famous, and a few years later, a second edition featured even more plant photographs. After the first book was released, the San Francisco Examiner wrote a feature review that gushed. These photographs of leaves, blossoms, and stalks of living plants amplify details not apparent to the human eye. One of the most interesting of the photographs is of the plant known as Vilcum's saxifrage, enlarged 8 times. The picture doesn't seem to be that of a plant, but of a delicately designed and fashioned brooch. Another image shows a shoot of the Japanese golden ball tree, enlarged 10 times, and is strikingly like the hilt of a sword used in the adventurous Middle Ages. And another picture showing the rolled leaf of a German ostrich fern was also so much like that of a crozier, a hooked staff carried by a bishop, that it seems that it must have been designed from fern leaves. And another photograph looks like the detail of a 14th century screen done in wrought iron. But it's actually nothing but a picture of the tendrils of the common pumpkin vine, enlarged 4 times. Students all over Europe are interested in the German professor's unique discovery and will in the future go more and more to nature for decorative designs. Karl's work still feels fresh and fascinating, and his 6,000 photographs remind us that art often imitates nature. Karl's microphotography is a great reminder to gardeners to look more closely at their plants. And finally, it was Karl Blossfeld who said, "Nature educates us into beauty and inwardness, and is a source of the most noble pleasure." In Unearthed Words, here is some prose about winter. The first is from the author D.H. Lawrence. The grim frost is at hand, when apples will fall thick, almost thunderous, on the hardened earth. And this one's from John Boswell, the historian. Winter, a lingering season, is a time to gather golden moments, embark upon a sentimental journey, and enjoy every idle hour. And finally, here's one from the realistic painter Andrew Wyeth. I prefer winter and fall, when you feel the bone structure in the landscape, the loneliness of it, the dead feeling of winter. Something waits beneath it. The whole story doesn't show. And it's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Ground Rules by Kate Frey. The subtitle to this book is 100 Easy Lessons for Growing a More Glorious Garden, and it came out in October of last year. In this photo-filled book, Kate shares her secrets to garden design and hard-won lessons on gardening. Thanks to the gorgeous illustrations and practical tips, Kate's book is an uplifting and refreshing read. Best of all, she shares her tips one page at a time, and they're easy to read and understand. And this makes Kate the rarest sort of expert gardener and designer in that she understands how to explain things to gardeners. Kate's book covers the following sections: design, including paths, seeding, color combinations, etc., planting advice, planting for your region, weather and location. Next, soil and water, how to identify the soil you have, how to conserve and use drip irrigation, and then how to be a good garden parent, deadheading, dividing plants, not letting weeds go to seed, how to attract birds, bees, and butterflies, and then finally, how to create a garden of earthly delights. This is where her design experience comes into play, and she teaches us how to evoke emotion and create community through plants. Great book. And today's recommended holiday gift for gardeners is a gold mushroom figurine set from Smith & Hawken, and you can get it at Target for just $9.99. So a great gift just under the $10 mark. This little gold-finished planter decor set includes 3 figurines that look just like little mushrooms. They're textured and they have this embossed detailing, and they're just sweet as can be. Each mushroom has a little small stake at the bottom, which makes it easy to insert into your planter, and they're made of aluminum, so they should last quite a long time. You can put all 3 together in one pot, or you can spread them out among your collection for whimsical appeal. And I think it's a fun way to add a little bling to indoor pots and containers. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. Today is the birthday of the American model Lorraine Collette, who was born on this day in 1892 in Kansas City, Missouri. At the age of 23, Lorraine was working as a Sun-Maid raisin girl, and she wore a blue bonnet with a white blouse and blue piping. Lorraine and the other Sun-Maid girls handed out raisins, and in a spectacular marketing stunt, Lorraine even hopped aboard a small plane every day of the festival and tossed raisins into the crowds of people. One Sunday morning, after her mom had set her hair into 8 long black curls, Lorraine was outside drying her hair in the warmth of her sunny backyard in Fresno. That afternoon, Lorraine had swapped out her blue bonnet for her mother's red one. And the combination of her silky black curls and the red bonnet in the sunshine apparently made an arresting sight. Coincidentally, a group of raisin co-op executives and their wives walked by at that very moment, and they asked Lorraine about the red bonnet. Well, after that day, all the Sun-Maids wore red bonnets, and Lorraine agreed to pose for a watercolor painting. Lorraine and her mom had to rent an apartment in San Francisco for a month in order to work with the artist Fanny Scafford. Lorraine posed every day, all month long, for 3 hours a day. She held a wooden tray overflowing with grapes while wearing the red bonnet. The portrait ended up as the symbol for the company, and it was included on every box of raisins. One newspaper article about the story in 1978 made me chuckle. It had the headline, hair a glinting in the sun, made girl an emblem. After the executive who discovered Lorraine passed away, the painting ended up in Lorraine's possession. But after many years, Lorraine returned the watercolor to the company. And today, the portrait hangs in a conference room at the Sun-Made Growers plant. And the faded red bonnet, well, that was donated to the Smithsonian on the company's 75th anniversary. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org, and be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up, and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.